Okay, this is how you need to make sure you lay your sleeves down to make sure that you have a mirrored image for each sleeve. One is going to be the left sleeve and one is going to be the right sleeve. And you need to make sure that the right side of the sleeve, which is this side, touches the table, your cutting table, so that the wrong side is facing up. And you also need to make sure that when you lay your tower placket down, I'll do this one first, that the right side of the placket always touches the wrong side of the sleeve. And the thing that you need to match up are these points here. And your tailor's tacks will match up. And also, you remember in the shirt making class how we did the V-clips that told us what the center point is? You have the same thing on your tower placket. You have a little V-clip there, which also matches into the V-clip on your shirt sleeve. So all we're going to do is to take our pins and to make sure that our tailor's tacks are matching up as best we can. It's in the right location. Our little V-clip matches up to the sleeve, and you're going to put a pin there. As far as these tailor's tacks are concerned, you just have these tailor's tacks here as indication as to where you need to stitch. Right in between the tailor's tacks is your center point. I just put these here as an indication of where to be able to stitch the little box. So I'm just going to put one more pin there just to hold it. And you're going to do the very same thing with the opposite sleeve. As you notice, your placket, the tower point of the placket is pointing toward the center of the sleeve. That way you know that you have the correct placket on the correct sleeve. And also, those tailor's tacks are matching up just like we did on the other sleeve. Our little center points are matching. And we'll just hold it there with a pin. Okay. One thing that you may decide to do just to make yourself feel better about where the lines are supposed to be is you've got your little clip marks that we discussed in the course. And I am just going to take a ruler and some chalk and just mark where I'm going to stitch. It just makes it a whole lot easier, a lot less scary to do. And that way you also know that you're stitching in a straight line to get the placement that you need. I'm only going to do one because you know whatever I do here will be done on the other sleeve. Now what we want to do is to sew the actual place where the placket will be cut open to form the tower placket. I'm using contrast color thread so that you can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to be careful to sew over the pin, which you should never do, but just to make sure that things stay in place for us to get the placket sewn. So again, try not to sew over pins if you can help it, but just be careful that you walk the machine over the pin. And if you need to make sure that you manually walk the machine so that you can sew from point to point, then it's okay to do that. pivot, and I can see the line, so I am going to go on and pull that pin out. As I go along, and you see I'm sewing right from point to point. And you're just going to cut your threads. And I'm going to move the machine out of the way so I can show you where you need to cut this open. That little point that is our center, all you do is cut straight through that. It's like cutting open a welt pocket. Any of you who do tailored clothes know that a welt pocket is cut open much the same way. And I'm cutting to the stitch but not through it. Okay, you can stop. Okay, now we've cut open where our placket is going to turn to the other side. So what you're going to do, remember it started out with right side of placket touching wrong side of sleeve, but you know that a placket is on the opposite side. So once you have cut it open, all you're going to do is flip your sleeve over, and as you can see, this is the right side of the sleeve. But we're going to be working down on this end. So all you want to do is to start your pressing. And I generally start on the smaller side of the tower placket, and all of your seams go on the inside of the placket. We're just going to press this side just to get it out of the way for right now, but we'll work on that part in a second. And that seam went in the direction of the placket. The next step is where you have the little clip is a fold back point. We'll get that out of the way. It ends up being about 3/8 of an inch that's folded back. And you fold that back and press it. The next step is to fold it back on itself to hide the seam. This side looks very much like the continuous placket that we did on the shirt in the class. So that's the first part of it. The next part is we've already put the seam in the direction of the tower portion of the placket. And you see here we have a tailor's tack and a clip to tell us where we need to press that part back. Then you fold it on itself, and all of your tailor's tacks are starting to meet the others. And you fold it just enough, and you've got a little clip down there to tell you where that fold is to cover that seam. And then remember, you've got 3 tailor's tacks in the shirt to tell you where to start folding the tower and where it meets. This is why I don't fold the tower ahead of time, because it may not always meet in the place that you would like for it to. I fold it as I go along. And the last little portion is right there. So it creates a nice little tower with a point on it. And now it's time to sew. Now it's time to close the placket up so you'll be able to wear it, because of course you won't wear it like this with it flapping all around. So I am just going to put a couple of pins just to hold it while I sew, and I'll pull the pins as I go along, and all you're going to do is sew maybe about 1/16 of an inch from the edge, and I always try to hold my threads in the beginning to help it get pulled through. And this is the underside of the placket. And you can backstitch or lock stitch it just to hold that part closed, and then you'll cut your threads. The next step, I'll move the machine back a little, is to close this side up and also the tower, and right here is where you sew across to keep everything closed up. So we're just going to put some pins there to hold it. I'll turn it this way because we'll start to sew from the bottom up. And you just want that fabric to cover the seam. So you just go in and pin it closed to prepare for you to sew. And up here at the tower, what I try to do is to not pin exactly where the points are, so that when you sew you can go right to the points without having a pin just be there. And you know from your tailor's tacks that this is where you're going to go and sew across, but I'm just going to put another pin there just to make sure it's in the right position. The other thing you want to check is on the back to make sure that the underside is tucked in to where that's going to be sewn, and it all looks like it's okay. So when you get ready to sew it, just make sure that this is not pushed over to the point where you sew that into here. And then, just like on the other side, you're going to make sure that you're about 1/16 an inch away or so. And of course, remember, when you are sewing yours, you're going to be using matching thread, so if it's not exactly straight, you won't see it anyway. So that's not something you should worry about. And we're coming to one of those little corners, and I'm just going to walk it to there, and we'll pivot and go up to the tower. And because we don't have a pin exactly in that point, you see where to sew that. It until we get to the point we want to pivot at, and I'll move that pin, and we see from our tailor's tacks where we want to be as far as our turning point to go across to close everything up. And you can kind of feel under here. I think we can go one more, one or two. Yep. And then we'll go across. And needle in, and don't have to backstitch. Just pull that out and leave your threads long, because remember when we did the pocket, we're just going to thread a needle and pull back through. And now you see the back of the sleeve where it's all closed up. You've got your tower sewn. Your underside was sewn in the very beginning. And now your placket has been completed. And as you see here, we've got a place where a buttonhole can go, and then the button underneath. There at this tailor's tack is where the button is sewn on so that it can button through the placket. All you have to do now is sew your sleeves in and go on and form your pleats, and your sleeve is completed. How easy is that? The only remaining thing to do is to press your placket and then prepare to put your sleeve into your shirt. Sew the seam up and then form your pleats. So we're just going to do one final press, and you can see that a tower placket is just a series of folds, a little sewing, and that's it. That's all you do. And there's the underside, and there's the top side. It's done.